everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you the struggles that my husband and I went through while we were getting married. If this is your first time here, my name is Lori, and I share videos about my life journey, my faith, Bible, anything along those lines. I would love for you to like this video and subscribe to my channel if this is something you're interested in. I shared with you in my last couple of videos about how I met my husband and struggles going through in a relationship. Today I'm going to be telling you about our catastrophes getting married. First of all, we lived 4 hours apart. My husband asked me to marry him, and it was just nuts. We wanted to get married in the church that we met in because that's where my husband grew up, and that's where I was currently going to church, and there's so many people there that we wanted to share our wedding day with. So we started making the plans to meet with the pastor. I had met with him several times, and Lee had met with him, I believe, 2 or 3 times, starting to just get to know us. I was sharing with the pastor about a little bit about my struggles from my previous relationship and how God brought us together, and he agreed. He said, I could definitely see God working in both your lives. And there was no doubt in my mind, and it seemed like there was no doubt in his mind either, that we should be married. Well, then I found out that his wife was pregnant, and she was due just a couple days before or after our wedding date. So I thought, oh boy. Okay, do we need to find a different pastor? Are we going to be able to use the church? Maybe he's not going to be able to marry us, is he? Well, I talked to him, and he said, I didn't really think about that, but it won't be a problem. If it does happen to be that same exact day, then we'll have a backup plan in place. But we'll talk more about that when it gets closer, so just don't worry about it. And Lee had been trying to call him because he was trying to schedule another time to meet up with him, and the pastor was not returning his calls. Lee was supposed to have been reading something and getting back to the pastor about it, but how was he supposed to do that if there was no phone calls returned? So finally, the pastor had asked me to go ahead and get something set up with him for Lee to meet with him the next time he was in town. So we got it set up, and he said he just wanted to meet with Lee this time. But previously he had said that he wanted to meet with both of us. So I thought that was kind of strange. So Lee went ahead and went down and talked to him, and we were getting really antsy because it's like, okay, we are getting at the point we need to start ordering invitations, and we have not even started talking about the wedding. We have not started talking about the premarital counseling. We had not been doing anything real in depth yet. And he had been talking about how important it was to get this counseling done, but yet he kept putting us off. So what's going on? So Lee went to meet with him that day. Lee straight out asked him, are you going to marry us or not? So then he starts quoting from the Bible, Matthew, I believe it was chapter 17. And that is where Jesus is telling the Pharisees why there's no second marriage. And he just kept talking about that and how this would apply to us, and really what it boiled down to was Lee's an alcoholic. He's been sober. At this point, it would have been about 4 years. 4.5 years, maybe. And he starts saying now that what Lee did while he was drinking was sinful, and so now he can't marry us. Okay, we told him right from the start that Lee was an alcoholic, and that through his recovery that he had changed his life over, and that he was now a Christian man and living a good life. And I had seen it myself, that he's a good man. And now all of a sudden the pastor says he can't marry us. So that was catastrophe number one. So we were just so in shock being told this, and especially the way it went down. It was not handled correctly at all. And so then we had to figure out, where are we going to get married? Well, Lee went ahead and we talked about it, and Lee called his pastors up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, at the church that he'd been going to for the last 4 or 5 years. So they agreed that they had no problem with marrying us. He said he knows Lee really well. He sees the life that Lee is living now, and he's met me the weekends I've been up there. He's seen nothing about me that would say that I'm not deserving, and he can see God working in both our lives. He had no reason to think that there was a reason not to get married. So he agreed to marry us, and he said as soon as Lee was back up in Sioux Falls, and that he could sit down and talk to him, and as soon as I could make it up there, that he would chat with both of us. So we moved the wedding to South Dakota. We really had wanted it to be with our people here because the plan was that I was going to be moving to Sioux Falls after the wedding, and it was kind of a final goodbye, if you will. Okay, so we had to start over from scratch, planning the wedding, and it was just nuts. And the funny thing is, all these people started, at Lee's church, started asking us, what do you need? What are you going to need to do? What do you need help with preparing this wedding? There were so many people that in the midst of what I called a catastrophe, God was blessing us. We went on, worked on getting invitations, and we decided to just have the reception right there at the church. In the meantime, I had read a book, and I'll put a link for it down below if I can find it. And it's funny because I found this thing called A Backwards Wedding. And I thought, well, that's interesting. We're kind of crazy people. Let's do it. So I asked Lee about it, and he loved the idea. So we started planning our wedding as a backwards wedding, where the reception is first, and then we have the wedding. So everybody loved it. So then we were working on getting that all ready, and I was scared to death to talk to my ex-husband. But I had to tell him that my plan was to move to Sioux Falls, South Dakota with his daughter. Catastrophe number 2. It did not go well. And he led me along thinking that he was going to consider allowing me to move. In the state of Nebraska, I'm not allowed to move with his child unless he gives me permission. And he was talking to lawyers and getting all this information, and long story short, he said no. We had all these thoughts that we could see what our lives would look like in Sioux Falls. And it wasn't going to be perfect by any means, but there were so many people there that were going to be supportive of us. And it's what we really needed. Well, apparently that was not God's plan. So even though my husband had just changed jobs and loved his new job, and he was making really good money, and he had all these people up there from his church and friends and his real true family, we couldn't live there. And we had all these people helping us with the wedding plans, and I felt awful. I barely know these people, and they're helping us get our wedding all sorted out. His Bible study group was making all the plans for the dinner, and his best friend, who was going to be the best man, or a groomsman at least, we didn't really do it that way, but he made pulled pork for the wedding, and the Bible study group made all the rest of the food. And after they go all out and do these things, we're just gonna leave? It just did not feel right to me. But long story short, Lee had to move down to Nebraska to be with me. And it's just crazy because what we thought was a catastrophe, again, turned into a blessing in disguise. Lee now lives in Nebraska with me, and he has found a job doing tires again that he didn't want, and he loves it. He loves his bosses, and he's really enjoying his life here, he tells me. And he said he wouldn't have it any other way. And I know this video is kind of getting long, but I just really wanted to share with you how planning this wedding, it was one thing after another. We thought that life was over pretty much. Between a pastor telling us, no, I won't marry you, and finding out I could not move where I wanted to move. It was God's plan. I don't like to admit it all the time, but this is where God wanted us, and this is how God wanted us to get here. So if you're having struggles planning a wedding or in a relationship right now, I really hope that this helps give you some hope that God has a different plan for you. So please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this, and I hope to see you again soon.